The first light of dawn stretches over the stone battlements, soft as ash yet sharp as glass, brushing the frost that clings to the eaves like silver lace. Each crystal glints in the pale light, catching and fracturing it into fragments that fall across the cold stones. The world exhales in silence, as though holding its breath, anticipating the stirring of life below. A raven lands upon the parapet, black wings slicing the dawn like knives. Its claws scrape the ancient granite, a harsh counterpoint to the fragile beauty of the frost. Its eyes glint with knowledge older than memory, reflecting not just the light, but centuries of warning. The echo of its presence hangs in the cold air, a solemn herald of what is to come, as if the stone itself remembers each misstep of those who came before. Below, in the great hall, a chest rests upon the flagstones, bound in iron and carved with sigils that speak of both glory and ruin. The carvings are intricate, serpentine letters curling around symbols of ravens, swords, and crowns. Each mark tells a story of ambition, of victories won and lives destroyed, a chronicle etched not on parchment but in iron and wood. The scent of damp timber rises from the walls, mingling with the faint, smoky aroma of long-burned tallow, a fragrance thick with history, with secrets whispered and half-forgotten. Every mark on its surface carries the weight of generations, a silent testament to the greed, folly, and pride of men who thought themselves above fate. A young lord stands before it, hesitant yet compelled, his hands tracing the worn engravings. Fingers trembling, he feels the cold bite of metal beneath his skin. Every indentation hums like a heartbeat of the past, each groove carrying the pulse of lives lived and lost. The weight of what it holds is not measured in coin or jewel alone. It is the gravity of sorrow, ambition, and the inevitable shadow of betrayal. He recalls the tales murmured by servants in hushed tones, their eyes flicking toward the chest in fear. Fever, madness, the ruin of men who sought fortune too greedily, who ignored the silent covenant of caution, who believed themselves masters of fate. The stories cling to him now, whispered through the frost and the shadows, warning him to retreat, yet he cannot. Curiosity and desire pull him forward as inexorably as tide to shore. Outside, the wind lifts from distant forests, carrying with it the scent of pine, earth, and the faint musk of roaming beasts. Wolves prowl in shadowed groves, their howls rising like lamentations for deaths unseen, mourning those claimed by the same inexorable fate that has haunted this chest for centuries. Each cry pierces the young lord's awareness, a sharp reminder that the world beyond stone walls is not safe, and that even here, within the seeming security of hearth and hall, danger is an ever-present companion. The sounds stir memories of old hunts and lost nights, of men who believed they could master what they touched, only to find that some things were beyond human grasp. He lifts the lid, and the hinges protest with a slow, mournful creak that echoes through the empty corridors like a dirge. The morning light spills across the room, illuminating motes of dust that dance like tiny spirits in the wake of the opening. For a heartbeat, the world pauses, holding its breath as if recognizing the moment. The chest seems almost sentient, aware of its new observer, its dark promise resonating in the marrow of the young lord's bones. He senses it acknowledging him, weighing him against those who came before, testing whether he is yet another soul who will succumb to its curse. Inside, the treasure gleams with a pale fire of its own, gold and gemstones that catch the dawn in cruel flashes. It is beautiful, irresistible, and yet there's a chill that crawls from the stone floor up through his body. It is a chill that speaks of silent betrayals, of pacts with fate, of laughter that has long since turned to wailing. The young lord feels it press against him, the weight of expectation and doom alike. Each coin, each jewel, seems to murmur a warning in tongues older than any tongue spoken in these halls. He realizes that the chest is more than a container of wealth. It is a vessel of consequence, a sentinel that has witnessed ambition and greed across the centuries. The tapestry on the wall stirs, though no wind moves the air. Symbols of ravens and crowns quiver, stitched in threads of black and crimson, as if alive, silent witnesses to all that has transpired within these halls. Their eyes, even in stillness, seem to pierce him, accusing, questioning, marking him as the next in a lineage long shackled by pride and fear. The shadows stretch and bend, reaching toward him, reminding him that the past is never truly gone. It waits, patient and watchful, in every corner, behind every stone. Memories flicker in his mind unbidden. The fevered nights of ancestors, whispered warnings ignored, loyalty broken and reforged in fire. He imagines men and women who touched the chest before him, who believed themselves stronger than superstition, only to be undone. Knights who found madness behind every coin, lords who vanished in shadow, servants who crossed themselves too late, and the silent fear that threaded through every corridor long before he was born. Every generation has left its mark upon the chest, every scar a warning, every dent a story of ambition and ruin. And now, he too stands at that precipice, feeling the invisible threads tugging him forward toward destiny or doom. The hall feels alive now. Every shadow whispers, every flicker of light a heartbeat. He senses the presence of unseen witnesses, a servant crossing herself behind a pillar, a knight lingering at the far door, the raven outside tilting its head, judging him. Even the wind seems to speak, sighing through the battlements with voices of the past, pressing against his resolve, reminding him that some treasures are never meant to be possessed without price. He reaches for a coin, cold and heavy, and the moment his fingers close around it, a shiver snakes through him. The sound beneath the silence, a soft, almost imperceptible rustling, crawls along the stone. It is the sigh of history, the echo of countless hands that have sought the same promise. He feels eyes upon him, spectral yet pressing with expectation. The chest does not merely contain wealth. It contains consequence. It carries the sins, the madness, the ruin, and the betrayals of every soul who dared claim it before. The young lord lowers the lid slowly, his hands trembling, and the sound resonates through the hall like a heartbeat returning to its place. The raven lifts into the air, wings slicing the dawn, and the wind carries the scent of forest once more. The tapestry flutters again, alive with silent accusation and warning. The young lord stands still, alone, knowing that the chest has acknowledged him, marking him as the next link in its chain. He breathes in the cold air, feeling the centuries settle upon his shoulders. The hall, the frost, the raven, the tapestry, all conspire to remind him that some inheritances are heavier than gold, that fortune is often cloaked in peril, and that every dawn carries both revelation and reckoning. As he turns toward the battlements, the frost glints in the light of the rising sun, the forest beyond whispering of wolves and lost souls, and somewhere in that fragile glow, the chest waits still, patient, eternal, a sentinel of all that has been lost and all that is yet to come. Even as he walks away, the pull remains, an invisible thread tugging at his heart, reminding him that the past has not yet released its claim, and that the dawn is merely the beginning of a longer, darker day. Shadows lengthen in the hall, stretching toward him like silent fingers, and the wind carries with it the faintest hint of a warning, the soft echo of voices long silenced. Be wary, for you are not alone. The chest has chosen you. A bell tolls in the distance, its hollow clang dragging across the mist that coils like smoke around the spires of the ancestral keep. The sound vibrates through the stones, shaking dust from corners long untouched, as though the fortress itself were exhaling a warning to the living. Fog creeps through the ramparts, slipping like ghostly fingers into arrow slits, curling around parapets and towers, and smothering the battlements in an uneasy silence. The frost that clings to the stones cracks under the timid morning sun, snapping like brittle bones, echoing across the courtyards in a hollow rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf's cry shatters the quiet, carrying hunger and mischief in equal measure. The widow, standing alone atop the ramparts, feels that cry reverberate in her chest, mingling with the spectral laughter of her ancestors, cruel, knowing, patient, promising that what is taken can never truly be held. Inside, the corridors of the keep are narrow, suffocating, heavy with dust and the tang of mold. The lingering scent of incense, burned in prayers forgotten, hangs like a fog, dense and pungent, touching the edges of memory and haunting the spaces where sunlight fails to reach. Candles line the walls, stubby and uneven, their flames flickering like hesitant hearts, casting a trembling light that struggles against the shadows. The widow walks slowly, careful not to disturb the stillness, aware that every step is recorded in the keep's silent memory. The walls themselves seem to breathe, contracting and expanding with centuries of history, and she feels the weight of generations pressing down, not as threat, but as expectation. Her fingers brush along the wall, tracing grooves worn by time, reading them as if they were words written in an ancient language, the language of legacy, of sorrow, of inevitable fate. She pauses at the display of her husband's armor, polished yet chipped, gleaming faintly in the candlelight, but not with pride. Each dent and scratch speaks of battles fought, of fear faced, of courage and despair intertwined. She traces the metal with reverence, feeling the cold bite against her skin, imagining the hands that once fastened it, the hearts that beat beneath it, the blood that baptized it. This armor, once a symbol of honor, now hums with the memory of those who wore it. A lineage marked by both valor and sorrow, by victories celebrated and lives lost, each echoing into the stones around her. Beneath her fingers lie treasures hidden for decades, buried under false floors, concealed behind secret compartments, locked doors that have not known the touch of a living hand for longer than memory can reach. Each gem, each goblet, each golden trinket seems to murmur, not softly, but insistently. The walls themselves whisper of promises no living heart should trust. Gold glimmers with a subtle menace. Silver gleams with the cold reflection of unspoken truths. She imagines the hands that first took these treasures, the eyes that longed for them, the souls that paid in blood or loyalty. They speak through time, warning and tempting simultaneously. To grasp what lies here is not to possess, but to inherit a debt that stretches beyond lifetimes. The servants move like shadows, silent as cobwebs, careful to avoid the flickering candlelight that plays across the stern faces and the portraits lining the walls. One pauses longer than the others, eyes dark and deep, as though measuring her worth, as though the gaze of those who came before can still judge the living. The patriarchs and matriarchs of oil and frame follow her, stern and unyielding, their painted eyes piercing her own. She shivers not from the cold, but from the weight of expectation, the knowledge that this keep remembers more than she does, and watches more closely than any living being could. In every stone, in every shadow, in every creak of timber and floorboard, there is history, heavy, relentless, unforgiving. Her hand closes around a pendant, delicate and cool. It belonged to a child lost before her eyes, a life snatched too soon. The cold metal presses against her skin, sharp and demanding, reminding her that in these walls, nothing comes without price. Wealth and lineage exact tolls invisible yet unending. She lifts the pendant to the dim light, and for a moment, the reflection dances across her tear-wet eyes. She imagines the tiny fingers that once grasped it, the laughter that once filled the halls, now gone, now swallowed by stone and silence. And in that quiet, she understands fully the cruel balance of legacy. For every jewel, every coin, every heirloom, a soul has been claimed, a life spent, a silence endured. A gust of wind rattles the shutters, carrying the scent of frost and distant pine. The wolf cries again, and she hears not just hunger, but laughter, mockery, the cruel delight of ancestors who measure the worth of the living against the cost of what they inherit. Every sound, every shadow, every faint whisper in the corridor seems alive, urging her to remember. The keep is patient, and the keep is relentless. Every step she takes is measured, recorded, judged. She is part of the story now, and there is no turning back. She places the pendant back on the table, letting its coldness sink into the wood, anchoring memory and grief alike. Her eyes lift to the stairwell that spirals downward, leading into the treasure vault below. The stones themselves seem to pulse, resonating with centuries of greed, ambition, and sorrow. Every crack, every groove, every smoothed edge hums with lives spent in the pursuit of power and inheritance. She feels a chill run down her spine, not from the cold, but from the inevitability of what awaits. The vault does not merely guard objects. It guards consequence, expectation, judgment, memory. To pass beyond that threshold is to converse with the dead, to negotiate with history, to pay tribute to those who will never forgive nor forget. The vault door looms like a maw of iron and oak, heavy and unyielding. Every lock, every hinge, every scratch on its surface tells of hands that have turned it before hers, of hearts that have quickened and faltered, of minds that have schemed and despaired. The treasure beyond is not mere gold, not simple silver, not trinkets meant for display. It is the culmination of desire, ambition, folly, courage, and blood. To touch it is to acknowledge every sacrifice made in its name, every betrayal committed for it, every debt that cannot be counted, cannot be repaid. She steps closer, feeling the weight of the air shift, the shadows thicken, and the stones seem to lean in, waiting, patient as eternity itself. Descending the spiral stairwell, she senses history pressing close. Candlelight trembles, smoke curls, and frost glints along the edges of stone. Each echo of her steps is a heartbeat of the past, a whisper of expectation. She is not alone, never alone. The keep, with its patience of centuries, observes, and the spirits of those who walked before her follow, gauging her courage, her fear, her resolve. Every step draws her deeper into the living memory of greed and loyalty, of ambition and despair. She is part of it now, inseparable from the story that stones and spirits have woven over generations. At the foot of the stairwell, she pauses, letting her hand brush the cold, rough stone. The pendant glimmers faintly on the table above, a fragile tether to a world that has passed beyond recall. Beyond her, the vault waits, dark, silent, alive. Its treasures whisper promises and threats in a language older than words, older than memory, older than hope itself. She inhales, feeling the weight of what she must do, what she must face. The wolf howls again, a note of wildness, of hunger, of the inevitable, and she steps forward. Shadows close around her, carrying her into the chamber of ancestors, into the story of inheritance, of cost, of tragedy and ambition that will unfold beyond these walls, beyond this breath, beyond the reach of the living. Every footstep into the vault is a negotiation with history. She hears the distant scraping of chains, the faint echo of laughter long gone, the sighs of servants who lived and died within these halls. Dust motes swirl in the candlelight like miniature specters, dancing above gilded surfaces, above gems that gleam like captured stars. Each artifact seems alive with memory, each surface a page in a story written not with ink, but with blood, desire, and the relentless march of time. Her hands tremble as she reaches for the first chest, feeling the hum of centuries beneath her fingers, the pulse of legacy, the silent judgment of all who have walked this path before. The first lock yields with a reluctant creak, a sound swallowed by the cavernous stillness, and she feels a shiver trace her spine. Gold coins, glittering like fallen sunbeams, spill slightly as she lifts the lid, and she senses that every piece, every object, is a fragment of the lives sacrificed to acquire it, the choices made in its name, the bloodshed in pursuit of its possession. She understands fully now that wealth is never truly free. It is an inheritance of burden, a tangible measure of intangible cost. Each jewel, each goblet, each chain is a testament to desire, to loss, to ambition that defies mortality itself. She pauses, listening to the silence, broken only by the occasional whisper of stones settling, the faint sigh of the wind through arrow slits, the echo of a distant wolf. Here, surrounded by generations of memory, she feels both dread and resolve intertwining, a fragile thread guiding her through the labyrinth of legacy, ambition, and sorrow. She knows that what she takes from this vault will mark her, define her, and tether her to a story she cannot escape, a story written in the lives and deaths of all who came before and all who will come after. The first snow falls silently over the northern keep, descending in a quiet curtain that softens the harsh edges of the world. Each flake drifts slowly, lazily, settling upon jagged battlements, frozen stone staircases, and the dark waters of the moat that reflect the pale, iron-gray sky. The wind moans through broken crenellations, a hollow, mournful sigh, carrying the memory of battles long past and the ghostly echo of commands shouted over frozen fields. It is a silence that is neither comforting nor empty. It is the weight of waiting, a patient vigil of centuries. The keep itself seems aware of this season, this moment. Its towers lean slightly, as if bowing under the accumulation of frost and time. The blackened stones are streaked with lichens that glimmer in the sparse light, telling the story of winters that came and went, each leaving behind scars and secrets. Snow clings stubbornly to arrow slits and jagged parapets, and in the distance, the dark waters of the river lap against ice-encased banks, whispering a frozen lullaby to the walls that have stood sentinel over this northern wilderness for generations. Inside, the hall is cavernous, a dim sanctuary of shadow and memory. The hearth sputters, its flames small and reluctant, sending flickering light across walls adorned with the remnants of ancient campaigns. Shields with their paint long chipped, banners faded to ghostly hues, swords blackened with age, helmets dented from blows that echo still in the stones. They hang like silent witnesses to the rise and fall of men who once believed themselves eternal. The scent of smoke mingles with damp stone and the faint, lingering tang of incense, left behind from prayers that were never fully answered. A young squire kneels before a chest, a vessel that is far more than mere wood and iron. Its planks are warped and splintered, the iron bands corroded, blackened, and unyielding, each lock a challenge forged in patience and cunning. He runs his fingers over the cold metal, feeling the weight of history that clings to every notch and scratch. Each lock seems alive, as though it breathes in rhythm with the memories it guards. He imagines all who have approached it before, kings who grasped greedfully, knights who trembled with fear, thieves who died clutching nothing but ambition. The treasure within is said to have come from distant crusades, from lands soaked in blood and sun, offered as homage to a grateful king. Yet the chest has never yielded happiness. Every hand that touched the gold has been met with calamity. Plagues that struck like shadows, famines that left bellies hollow and hearts hollower, betrayals that tore families apart, and madness that whispered in dark corners. The squire can almost feel these past misfortunes vibrating in the chest, a pulse that resonates through the floor beneath him. He touches a silver cup, icy and paradoxically warm, and in that instant, a vision rises unbidden. He sees a merchant fevered and pale, clutching the chalice as though it could cure the sickness of his village. He sees a knight, bloodied and trembling, pressing a jeweled crown to his brow, believing that it would grant glory beyond measure. A queen appears, her hands shaking, offering gold to gods who no longer answer, her eyes wide with despair and hope intertwined. In each image, the treasure is not inert. It remembers. It judges. It demands. Candle smoke curls upward in slow, deliberate spirals, twisting around rafters like phantoms of lost heirs, battling the stale scent of decay, mingling with a faint trace of incense. The squire breathes in, shivering despite the hearth's feeble warmth. Each exhale carries the sighs of generations past, fathers, brothers, knights, bound to the relentless rhythm of fate. Every shadow in the hall seems to stretch toward him, whispering their own warnings in the language of silence. Outside, the wind rises, fierce and unrelenting, threading through broken battlements and rattling iron spikes. Somewhere across the frozen fields, a lone wolf howls, its voice a chilling counterpoint to the distant clang of abandoned armor. The squire's gaze drifts to the high windows, fogged and streaked with frost, and he feels the weight of lineage pressing upon him. The keep is alive in its own way, breathing through stone and snow, remembering deeds of valor and horror alike. He traces the carvings on the chest, worn symbols that once denoted power and protection. Every groove is a story, every dent a lesson etched in desperation. He imagines the hands that have turned these locks before, trembling, eager, afraid. And he imagines the silent curse that grew heavier with each attempt, the whisper of disease, the shadow of famine, the echo of betrayal. The chest does not merely guard wealth. It guards memory, morality, and consequence. A raven lands suddenly on the sill, its wings flaring black against the dim glow of the hearth, feathers whispering against stone. Its eyes gleam with the same unyielding judgment as the chest. For a heartbeat, the hall seems smaller, more intimate, as though the bird itself has stepped out of the past, a witness to the relentless cycles of ambition and ruin. The squire cannot tear his eyes away from the reflection in the silver cup, where shadows of the dead writhe, half seen, half remembered. The first night deepens. Snow falls thicker now, muffling the distant cry of the wolf and the low groan of the keep. Each flake seems to settle with purpose, a reminder of the slow accumulation of time and consequence. The squire presses his hand more firmly against the chest, feeling it pulse under his fingers, alive with patient intent. He senses that the chest does not simply contain treasure. It contains a ledger of human folly, a record of desire and despair accumulated over centuries. He whispers the names of those who sought it: kings, knights, merchants, monks. Each name vibrates in the cold hall, merging with the smoke and the shadows, echoing through stone. They are warnings, prayers, or curses. He cannot yet discern which. And he realizes, with a shiver that runs from fingers to spine, that this is a test not of strength, but of reverence and understanding. To touch the chest is to confront all that came before. To lift the cup is to commune with the dead. The squire sits in silence, eyes wide, imagination aflame. He sees armies marching across desert sands, hands slick with blood, bringing plunder to a distant king who never knew peace. He sees families torn apart by gold they could not protect, faces pale with hunger, eyes haunted with regret. He feels the weight of all this tragedy pressing upon his small shoulders. The hall grows colder, the shadows longer. The fire dwindles to embers, and the chest seems to breathe in rhythm with his own heartbeat, patient, eternal, insistent. Outside, the storm gathers its final strength. Snow lashes against towers, drifts over broken battlements, and blankets the world in white oblivion. The wolf's howl slices through the frozen night, sharp and lonesome, answering some ancient summons only it can hear. Within the hall, the squire's fingers tighten around the cup once more. He feels the cold of metal and the warmth of memory, the pulse of every hand that has touched it before. He knows, in the marrow of his bones, that treasures do not simply belong to those who take them. They endure, they remember, they demand reverence and caution in equal measure. And as the night stretches on, the first snow continues to fall, silent yet certain, covering battlements, walls, and waters alike. In its quiet persistence, it mirrors the chest's own patience, the inevitable accumulation of fate that waits for no one. The hall descends into shadows, but the squire remains kneeling, a solitary figure suspended between past and future, life and legend, fear and curiosity. Outside, the wind moans, inside the chest breathes, and all around, the snow carries its relentless promise that history is never idle, that wealth is never neutral, that the next chapter is already written in frost, iron, and shadow. The first whisper of the storm ripples across the rolling hills like a prelude, a low, urgent murmur that grows in insistence. It twists through the high grass, bends the wildflowers, and flutters the thin banners atop the distant watchtowers. The air is thick, heavy with the metallic tang of lightning-charged ozone and the earthy perfume of wet soil. Each inhalation tastes of rain yet to fall, of storm yet to fully claim the valley. Far below, the river churns restlessly, its surface dotted with silver droplets that leap in anticipation, as if the land itself holds its breath. From the solar of the manor, the daughter sits, still and upright, her hands folded around the last relic of her grandmother, a gold ring, warm and familiar against the chill of her skin. The weight of it is comforting and cruel all at once. It presses against her fingers like a heartbeat from a life long gone, a pulse from the past that refuses to release its hold. Before her, on a cushion of deep crimson velvet, rests the orb. Gold, encrusted with rubies that glint with an almost conscious fire, it is less an object of wealth than an heirloom of memory, a vessel for history itself. Its surface seems to shift under the candlelight, alive with the recollections of every hand that has ever grasped it. The rubies gleam like eyes, bright and judgmental, reflecting not her own gaze but the sorrow and ambition that have followed it through generations. The wind rattles the window panes, raising a faint chorus in the tapestries that line the walls. Battles frozen in thread, hunts in forests of silk, feasts where kings once laughed, all depicted with exquisite detail. Yet the representations of wealth bear a different air entirely. Gold chalices overturned, coffers gaping empty, crowns cracked along the circlet. It is a warning more vivid than any spoken, a reminder that prosperity carries a shadow that endures. Servants whisper in the hallways of curses and misfortune, of sickness that clung like a second skin to the families who bore the orb. Their voices tremble with fear, yet it is not fear of the storm. It is the kind of fear that remembers, that feels the pull of generations lost to ambition, folly, or betrayal. The daughter lifts the orb to the window. Rain begins its first tentative patter against the glass, each droplet a tiny drumbeat in the symphony of the approaching tempest. The orb's surface feels impossibly cold, yet it pulses with an energy she cannot name, an echo of lives long past. Somewhere in the distance, the bell tolls, each note ringing clear and sonorous, reverberating in her chest. She shivers, not from the cold, but from the weight of memory, the unbroken chain of sorrow that coils invisibly around her family name. Lightning cracks, illuminating the valley in stark clarity. She flinches as the orb seems to shiver in her hands, as though it too feels the storm's violence. The sound of thunder follows immediately, rolling through the hills and shattering the stillness of the manor. And yet, amidst this natural chaos, the human histories held within the orb are louder. Triumph, betrayal, ambition, love, grief. These are the true storms, relentless and inescapable. She feels the pulse of every hand that has touched it, every hope pinned upon it, every despair recorded silently within its cold, golden heart. The orb is more than gold. It is a ledger of human folly, a silent witness to centuries of joy, cruelty, and quiet desperation. Her mind drifts across the tapestry of her lineage. She sees her ancestors as if in fleeting visions. A great-grandfather felled in a raid, his blood soaking the earth he once tilled. A mother silent with grief, eyes hollow from loss. A father undone by debt and courtly intrigue, his ambitions crumbling like sand through fingers. The orb has seen it all. It has survived fire, famine, war, and betrayal, each mark on its surface a testament to the cost of legacy. She imagines the laughter and tears, the prayers whispered into the night, the silent curses muttered under breath. The orb contains these moments as surely as the stones of the manor contain the echoes of the past. Outside, the storm gains power, gusts of wind rattling the shutters, carrying the scent of wet grass, of the river swollen by distant rains, into every corner of the manor. The daughter closes her eyes, imagining the footsteps of ancestors along these same halls. Each footfall resonates in her mind, each choice they made, each life lived in triumph or despair, a ghostly rhythm that she feels in her chest. The orb is heavy with more than wealth. It is heavy with the expectations and failings of those who came before. Each ruby seems to throb, a heartbeat in time with the lineage she carries, a pulse that reminds her she is both observer and participant. The storm lashes the manor with renewed ferocity. Rain strikes the stone walls like 1,000 tiny hammers. Wind whistles through the eaves, carrying with it the scent of distant mountains and the electric tang of ozone. Lightning flares again, and for a fleeting moment, she sees herself reflected in the orb, surrounded by centuries of memory, a solitary figure suspended between past and future. She feels the presence of her ancestors, not as spirits, but as histories pressing upon her. Their triumphs and failures, whispered secrets, silent regrets, and unspoken hopes press close. She senses the choices they could not make, the courage they lacked, the mistakes that doomed them. And yet, she also senses a path forward, narrow and uncertain, lit only by the flickering candlelight and the occasional flash of lightning. Her hand brushes against the ring from her grandmother. The metal is warm now, as if responding to her touch. She recalls the woman who wore it, a healer taken by fever, whose life was brief, but whose influence endured. She imagines the grandmother's fingers, the scent of her hair, the soft murmur of her voice in the quiet hours before death. The orb has held these moments too, cataloged them silently, and now, centuries later, they are hers to touch, to feel, to acknowledge. The room is heavy with the combined weight of storm and memory, of air thick with the promise of rain and the scent of wet stone. She steps back from the window, allowing the orb to rest once more upon its cushion. Candlelight dances across the gold and rubies, fracturing into 1,000 miniature lightning strikes that echo the storm beyond the glass. Each flash illuminates the tapestry-lined walls, bringing to life the frozen faces of kings, warriors, and courtiers. Their eyes seem to follow her, questioning, judging, reminding her that history is never inert. The storm rages, relentless, yet within these walls, a fragile calm forms, a space in which she can confront the lineage that shaped her, the burden of choice, and the weight of destiny. The bell tolls once more, a reminder that time does not pause for grief or reflection. Rain drums steadily on the roof. Wind screams through the eaves, yet the room feels insulated, sacred, a womb of memory and reckoning. The daughter touches the orb again, feeling the pulse of the past and imagining the possibilities of the future. It is clear now that this is not mere treasure. It is a mirror of humanity, a silent arbiter of ambition and despair, a repository for the stories that demand to be remembered. Each heartbeat, each sigh, each whispered prayer from generations past is preserved in its cold, gleaming surface. Lightning flares one last time across the valley, illuminating the manor and the surrounding hills in stark clarity. She sees herself reflected in the orb, surrounded by centuries of sorrow and ambition, yet also by fragile hope. The storm is both witness and participant, a reminder that life moves forward even as it bends under the weight of memory. The daughter understands that the orb will not forgive or forget. It will only witness. And so, she remains, hand upon gold and ruby, heart attuned to the echoes of the past, aware that she is now part of this endless continuum. As the storm breaks fully, rain cascading in sheets, wind screaming like a chorus of lost voices, she steps away from the window, leaving the orb upon its cushion. Its cold fire burns in the dim light, a reminder that history is neither kind nor cruel. It simply is. And in this quiet, charged moment, she realizes that she carries forward the legacy, the sorrow, the ambition, the courage, and the heartbreak of all who came before. The bell tolls once more, the final echo blending with the fading thunder. Outside, the storm begins to abate, but within the solar, a storm of memory and possibility endures, endless and unbroken. The market square lies deserted, a washed-out canvas of slick cobblestones reflecting the gray, weeping sky above. Rain hisses as it collides with uneven stones, forming puddles that shimmer faintly like liquid mirrors, echoing the solemnity of loss. A lone herald's trumpet pierces the morning fog, a trembling, mournful note carried on the wind, a lament for another heir claimed by fate, another branch of lineage severed before it could bear fruit. The sound ricochets from the shuttered stalls, abandoned wagons, and empty arcades, filling the space with an eerie resonance, as though the town itself breathes in sorrow and exhales despair. The scent of wet leather and iron rises from the ground, mingling with the faint trace of baking bread long since cooled, a reminder of lives that once thrived here, now vanished into silence. A stray dog, gaunt and sodden, pads softly through the puddles, its paws leaving fleeting impressions that the rain washes away almost immediately. The animal stops, lifts its head to the sky, and lets out a long, mournful howl, a lamentation for those gone, for families dissolved into shadows, for a world that continues to turn indifferent to grief. Each note of its cry seems to answer the distant tolling of the bells from the keep, ringing measured, relentless, and unforgiving. Time has not paused for mourning, and it will not pause for those left behind. Beyond the walls of the ancestral keep, the air shifts. Here, the damp of the streets is replaced with the warmth and weight of history. Candle smoke curls in lazy spirals toward the high ceilings, mingling with the scent of mildew, the faint perfume of incense long burned, and the musk of stone that has witnessed generations of ambition, folly, and despair. In this quiet, A steward moves with careful reverence, his steps echoing softly, almost as if the stones themselves measure his intrusion. His hands, calloused yet tentative, reach for a chest untouched for decades, iron-bound, heavy with the weight of centuries. He lifts the lid, and the air exhales a breath of the past, thick with memory and consequence. Inside, the treasure gleams unnaturally, gold and silver catching the flicker of torchlight like trapped fire. Yet the brilliance is not innocent. It carries the weight of every hand that has claimed it, every oath sworn in its shadow, every life altered by its presence. Each coin bears a scar, a dent from the hammer of war, a chip from famine's bite, a scratch left by betrayal. Jewels sparkle, yet the light that strikes them is cold and accusatory, revealing a brilliance that has survived but also imprisoned countless ambitions. The steward traces a finger along a gold coin, worn smooth at the edges yet faintly etched with the insignia of a long-forgotten battle. A pendant glimmers dully, its gemstone clouded by age, surviving flames that consumed the halls of kings and barons alike. As he lifts it, the weight of countless hands brushing against it, grasping, coveting, losing, presses against his mind. He can almost hear whispers of ancestors, their voices a susurration threading through the torchlight, warning, accusing, lamenting. Greed is hunger. Hunger is ruin. The chest remembers all. Tapestries ripple as if breathing, their woven faces twisted in silent accusation. Portraits of forebears peer down with eyes that gleam in shadowed corners, eyes that have seen ambition bloom and wither, that have witnessed kin turn to enemies, that have watched loyalty dissolve into betrayal. The steward imagines their voices rising in muted chorus, a lament for lives squandered on desire. Every stitch seems to pulse with the stories of the keep, the echoes of laughter now silenced, of feasts devoured by flames, of children born into privilege and lost to plague. He reaches for a jeweled dagger, its surface icy, biting against the warmth of his hand. In that instant, he perceives the echo of countless funerals, of families undone, of halls emptied by the relentless passage of mortality. Each object in the chest is a vessel of memory, a fragment of a life, a piece of fate bound in metal and stone. The dagger seems almost to hum beneath his fingers, a subtle vibration that speaks of the blood that is spilled, the decisions that have fractured houses, the lives consumed in the pursuit of permanence. Outside, the wind carries scents that prick the senses, smoke from distant hearths, wet hay from flooded fields, the damp, loamy earth of rain-soaked soil. The dog's mournful cry drifts through the open windows, harmonizing with the tolling bells, a chorus that marks the passage of life and the certainty of death. Within the keep, silence presses heavier than stone, yet the chest seems to vibrate with presence, a subtle pulse that demands acknowledgement. Every soul who has dared to touch it, every oath sworn or broken in its shadow, every whisper of desire or fear has been absorbed, layered into its essence. It is more than treasure. It is an archivist of human folly, patient and unyielding, waiting for the next hand to reach, the next heart to be tempted. The steward lets his fingers linger on the dagger, feeling the cold seep into his skin like liquid metal. He wonders how many before him believed themselves masters of fate, only to discover that fate was already waiting, patient, inevitable. Shadows twist and stretch across the walls, dancing in torchlight, as if aware of the presence of the living in a hall built for memory. His heartbeat quickens with the rhythm of past lives, each pulse a reminder of ambition, loyalty, hunger, and loss. A faint murmur rises from the tapestries, or perhaps it is the wind, or perhaps it is his own imagination, a susurration of silk and thread, of faces in rage, sorrow, and warning. He closes his eyes, inhaling the scent of the chest, of metal and aged wood, of lives distilled into objects. The chest does not merely hold wealth. It holds choices, regrets, victories, and the inexorable truth that those who reach for it are bound to a cycle far older than themselves. He steps back, the torchlight flickering across his furrowed brow. The dog's lament fades into the distance, leaving only the rain's soft percussion on the roof above, a quiet drumbeat marking the relentless passage of time. He allows his gaze to wander over the hall, tarnished silver, gilded ornaments, dust motes suspended like spirits in the amber light. Each object is a witness, each shadow a memory, each breath a reminder that time is patient, enduring, and merciless. A sudden chill runs down his spine, like the hall itself is inhaling, whispering the inevitability of mortality and folly. He touches the chest again, and for a fleeting instant, he feels the weight of centuries of countless hands reaching, grasping, failing, and surrendering. It is a weight heavier than gold, heavier than silver, heavier than ambition. The chest pulses as if alive, patient, inexorable, a sentinel awaiting the next soul foolish enough to seek dominion over it. He turns from the chest, feeling the oppressive presence of the past closing in. The wind outside shifts, carrying the scent of wet stone and burning hearths, a reminder that life continues beyond the memory of the keep, indifferent to those trapped in its shadows. Yet, even as he moves, the sensation of being watched lingers. The gold glimmers not with light, but with expectation, and the tapestry faces follow him with eyes that do not blink. Every object, every shadow, every line etched into wood and stone seems to remind him. This keep, this chest, this treasure will endure far longer than any hand that touches it. It is not merely wealth. It is a chronicler of desire, a witness to folly, patient in its judgment, recording each ambition, each betrayal, each fleeting triumph. The steward exhales, stepping lightly across the worn floor, aware of the echoes of every footfall that has preceded his own. Outside, the bells toll again, low and full, marking the passing of another life, another heir, another story bound to the chest's eternal memory. He pauses in the center of the hall, sensing the suspended moment between past and future, between loss and longing. Time itself feels to pause, the world holding its breath, watching to see who will step forward next, who will claim the chest, and, with it, their own thread in the unbroken tapestry of history. He kneels once more, tracing the intricate carvings on the chest's lid, feeling the grooves left by generations of hands. Every scar, every dent, every tarnish is a narrative, an intimate record of human desire and suffering. The gold and silver, once coveted and feared, now lie inert yet alive with memory. The gemstones catch the torchlight, refracting it into shards of remembered agony and triumph. The steward can almost hear the echo of voices long silenced, whispers of counsel, of secrets, of warnings unheeded, all absorbed into the enduring silence of the hall. And yet, amid the weight of memory and shadow, a strange calm settles over him. For in recognizing the cycles, in feeling the pulse of history in his veins, he perceives the delicate balance between greed and restraint, between ambition and consequence. He understands, as all who have come before him might have, that the chest is not simply a vessel of desire, but a mirror, reflecting the true measure of those who approach it. Those who reach for it are measured not by their strength, but by the weight of their choices, the depth of their understanding, and the courage to face what history may demand of them. The castle gates creak on rusted hinges, swinging open with a groan that stretches into the cold, misted morning. Each movement seems reluctant, as though the iron itself resents disturbance, and yet it must open. Frost clings to the wrought iron like crystal tears, sparkling faintly as the first shafts of sunlight catch the edges. Beyond the gates, the courtyard sprawls in solemn quiet, a graveyard of stones and banners, abandoned yet alive with echoes of life that once pulsed here. Mist drifts in ghostly columns, curling around toppled pennants and moss-covered battlements, carrying the lingering whispers of forgotten voices. The banners, tattered and frozen stiff, still bear the sigils of lords long dead, their colors dulled by rain, sun, and time, yet they speak still of ambition and pride that once reached toward the sky. The stones beneath the scholar's feet are uneven, slick with frost, and each step seems to press him deeper into memory. Here, the air is thick with history, dense and pungent with the odor of iron, wood, and the faint decay of straw long left to rot in the shadow of the keep. It smells of fire extinguished too late, of battles fought to the last breath, of bodies buried hastily in unmarked graves. The courtyard is not empty. It is suspended in a liminal state, caught between the living and the dead, the past and the present, its silence almost reverberant with the weight of all that transpired here. A wind rises, carrying the sharp, bitter tang of ice and smoke, and through it, the faint scent of parchment, old and brittle, drifts from the inner hall. It smells of knowledge and of greed, of secrets passed hand to hand across centuries, each one etched into the fibers of memory and stone. Inside, the hall stretches wide and dim, a cavernous space where every shadow seems to have substance, every whisper seems to echo with intent. Shafts of weak sunlight fall through narrow, arrow-slit windows, catching on dust motes that hang like suspended stars in the morning air. A scholar kneels at a central table, hunched over a golden chalice. His fingers trace the runes carved into its surface with care, a reverent tremor in his touch. These runes promise riches beyond measure, yet the scholar senses the undercurrent of something darker, an eternal grief that has traveled with the chalice across seas, battles, and centuries. Each curve of the gold, each jewel inset into its surface, vibrates with memory. It is as though the chalice remembers the hands that have held it before, the hearts that have coveted it, the blood that has been spilled in its pursuit. Around the hall, treasures lie like fragments of lives once lived. A bear's pelt, coarse and matted, drapes over a beam, claws splayed in a silent snarl, and the scholar's mind recalls the brutal tale of the king it killed in the forest far beyond the northern mountains. A crown rests in shadow, dented and scratched, its once proud gleam marred by the violent hands that fought over it, by betrayal whispered in the corridors of power. Rusted chains coil on the floor, relics of men and women condemned for treason, their fates intertwined with secrets too dangerous to speak aloud. Each object is more than an artifact. It is a vessel of memory, sorrow, and doom, holding within it the essence of those who touched it, possessed it, and suffered because of it. The scholar moves carefully, as if each step might disturb a century of accumulated grief. He senses the eyes of ancestors upon him, the weight of countless generations watching silently. They do not speak, but their presence is felt in the stiff air, in the faint tremor of the candles, in the way the treasures seem to shiver under his gaze. The hall itself becomes a living organism, breathing with history, mourning with those who have passed through it, warning the living of the cost of ambition. He lifts a gem-encrusted necklace, its cold weight pressing into his palm, and the jewels glint with reflected light, showing not only his own reflection, but the echoes of those who have handled it before. Faces appear, some emaciated from hunger, some twisted with madness, some frozen in fear, some drowned in cold waters, all bound together by the relentless march of desire and loss. Every object carries a story of calamity. The bear's pelt remembers the roar of victory and the silence of death. The crown hums faintly with betrayal, a subtle vibration that seems to whisper, "Remember me." Remember their greed. The chains seem to hiss, a cold, metallic warning of confinement and despair. Even the air in the hall holds these memories, thick and almost tactile, wrapping the scholar in their invisible fingers. He understands, with a creeping dread, that this is not merely a hall of treasures, but a hall of the dead, a monument to ambition's cost, a silent testament to the price of human desire. Outside, the world moves differently. Crows wheel above the frozen moat, their wings cutting black paths through the fog. Their cries layer over the distant toll of the chapel bell, a deep, resonant lament that has rung for centuries. The sound threads through the courtyard, past the gates, and into the inner hall, binding the present to the past. The scholar listens, feeling the resonance of grief and warning, sensing that every cry, every toll is a message from the ages, urging caution, demanding respect. The wind carries the sound, twisting it with the fog, folding it around the stones and the treasures, embedding it into the very fabric of the castle. He sets the necklace down, and it settles among its companions, a sentinel among relics of memory and sorrow. The fog curls and recoils around him, a living presence, carrying faint, hushed laughter, mocking, mournful, timeless. The treasures stir as though alive, anticipating the next hand to claim them, the next heart to covet them. The scholar feels their silent patience, their immutable purpose, and shivers. He knows that the objects will wait, as they have always waited, for the next generation to touch them, to fall into their shadow, to inherit their curse. In a shadowed corner, a tapestry flutters slightly, though no wind touches it. Scenes of battles, coronations, and feasts are woven in thread worn thin by centuries, yet the images remain vivid with drama and suffering. Kings fall, children cry, knights falter, lovers whisper in doomed secrecy. The scholar traces the threads, feeling the lives that unfolded within them, the pain and joy stitched into every fiber. He realizes that each artifact, each stone, each shadow in this hall is connected to the others, forming a web of memory, tragedy, and inevitability. Every treasure is a node in this network of human desire, ambition, and sorrow, bound together across time. The scholar steps back to the center of the hall, his gaze sweeping over the collection, the chalice, the necklace, the crown, the bear's pelt, the rusted chains. Each holds a warning, a lesson, a memory, yet none can speak directly. They communicate only through presence, through the sense of inevitability, through the subtle hum of past misdeeds and sacrifices. He feels the pull of their stories, a gravitational force drawing him into the continuum of history. And in that moment, he understands the castle's essence. It is not merely stone and wood and gold. It is memory itself, a container for the human soul's aspirations, failures, and grief. As he moves toward a narrow window overlooking the outer wall, the first light of dawn strikes the frozen moat. Ice glitters like splintered glass, fog weaving through it in silver and gold threads. The crows have flown, leaving only the echo of their cries in the courtyard. The silence is not comfort. It is the waiting of history, the expectancy of what comes next, a space pregnant with the weight of inevitability. The treasures, though still, are awake, alive in memory and warning, ready to claim those who enter unprepared, just as they have claimed all who came before. He pauses, feeling the eyes of the dead, of the ancestors, of the ghosts of ambition and folly, fixed upon him. Their presence is patient, unyielding, eternal. Beyond the walls, the chapel bell tolls once more, long and mournful, threading its resonance into the hall, into the courtyard, into the fog, binding past, present, and future in a single mournful chord. The scholar's breath mingles with the cold air, shallow and deliberate, as he contemplates the unbroken cycle of desire and loss that the castle preserves. And so he steps toward the stair that will lead him further into the fortress, the fog curling around his feet like silent sentinels, whispering promises of history, caution, and inevitability. He knows, with the weight of centuries pressing upon his shoulders, that he is part of this story now, a single note in an endless, echoing symphony. The treasures wait, patient as ever. The castle breathes, and the past stirs, ready to continue its relentless, unyielding song. Twilight drapes the keep in violet shadows, stretching long and cold across frost-crusted battlements. The last slivers of sun linger on the stones, glinting off frost like molten silver trapped in ice. Each tower, each arrow slit, seems to breathe under the weight of centuries, exhaling stories too old to remember and secrets too bitter to speak aloud. The chill clings to the air, a biting reminder that even the walls themselves have grown old, scarred, and vigilant. Somewhere in the distance, the mountains cast silhouettes jagged as broken swords, and the wind whistles through the valleys like a morning song, a hymn to forgotten kings and shattered promises. Inside the treasury, the atmosphere is almost sacred in its stillness. The air is thick with the scent of aged oak, dust, and rust, a metallic tang that prickles the skin and raises goosebumps along the spine. This is a room that has held centuries of desire, greed, and ambition. Each object is not a mere treasure, but a vessel, a memory of human craving etched into metal and gem. A jeweled crown rests in a velvet-lined box, its rubies dark as blood, its gold dulled by the weight of years and the hands that have touched it. Beside it, a silver chalice, tarnished with time, seems almost a sigh, whispering of drunken triumphs and desperate prayers. A gilded sword, long since dulled by the passage of history, lies in solemn stillness, the scabbard worn where generations of knights once clasped it, seeking honor, glory, or survival. A solitary knight kneels before a coffer, his boots pressing into the stone floor with the subtle sound of despair. He is cloaked not only in chainmail, but in the gravity of history itself. His hands, gloved in leather stiffened by cold, hover above a ceremonial dagger, its hilt etched with names and symbols that have long since vanished into the fog of time. Each letter seems alive under his fingers, carrying with it the echoes of famine, plague, betrayal, and bloodshed. The dagger is a relic of hubris and ruin, a witness to human folly that refuses to lie silent. Through the narrow windows, the wind stirs the banners that hang tattered along the battlements. Their fabrics, threadbare and faded, flap against the stones like spectral wings. Shadows crawl along the walls, merging with the flickering candlelight to create fleeting faces. Faces of kings who sought immortality and conquest, of fools who reached too far, of servants and soldiers whose lives were spent in obedience and fear. A bell tolls in the distance, heavy and sonorous, each note threading through the keep as if the walls themselves remember every life lost within them. The knight rises slowly, his movement deliberate, almost reverent. The candle flickers, throwing shadows that stretch and contort, mingling the living with the dead. Every heartbeat seems magnified, pounding against the stone like a drum, each echo a testament to the inevitability of consequence. The treasures are not idle. They are sentinels, recording, watching, passing judgment with patience only centuries can cultivate. Gold and silver, jewels and steel, they are heavy not for their material value, but for the memory they carry, the ambitions they have witnessed, and the despair they have endured. He brushes the dagger again, fingertips grazing the etched names, and feels the pulse of history thrumming through it. He imagines the hands that gripped it before him, a knight defending a castle against insurmountable odds, a noble executing a rival in the shadows, a thief daring to steal glory only to vanish into legend or infamy. He sees famine-stricken faces reflected in the polished crown, hears whispers of betrayal in the hollowed silver of the chalice. History is not linear here. It folds upon itself like smoke curling through a torchlit hall, each moment layered with the weight of all that came before. The wind carries with it the faint scent of the outside world, cold, damp, alive with frost and the faint musk of forest. Somewhere beyond the keep, an owl hoots, solitary and piercing, its cry a warning and a lament. It is the voice of vigilance, of death's quiet patience. The banners stir again, skeletal wings in the dark, and for a moment the knight feels as if the entire keep breathes with him, aware of his presence, measuring his intent. The treasures themselves seem to lean subtly toward him, drawing him into the gravity of their silent narrative, as if the centuries demand to see who dares claim their attention. A sudden gust from the arrow's slit rattles the candle, sending the flame flickering in shadows, writhing along the walls. The knight's breath catches in his chest as he notices the play of light and darkness. Faces materialize and vanish, some scowling, some pleading, all watching him with patient judgment. He realizes that the coffer is more than a container of wealth. It is a mirror of ambition, greed, and inevitable consequence. Every coin, every jewel, every artifact is a testament to human desire and the ruin it inevitably brings. The dagger in his hand is a bridge between past and present, a symbol of the price paid for daring to reach for power. He kneels again, tracing the edge of the coffer, feeling the grooves worn smooth by centuries of hands. In the silence, he hears echoes, not of voices, but of footfalls long past, of armor clanging in distant corridors, of whispered prayers and curses alike. The treasures are patient, waiting for the next hand, the next ambition, the next soul drawn to their weight. The crown gleams faintly in the candlelight, its rubies like frozen fire, reflecting a world of greed and glory. The chalice sits nearby, tarnished yet proud, reminding him that even joy and celebration are fleeting under the inevitability of mortality. The sword rests silently, a relic of courage and brutality, indifferent to the hands that grasp it, demanding respect only from those who understand its history. The knight stands, moving slowly through the treasury, letting his eyes drink in the artifacts and their shadows. He senses the countless lives that intersected here, kings who ruled with iron and fear, knights who fell in battle or treachery, servants who endured silently, and thieves who vanished in a legend. Every stone, every object, every draft of wind is imbued with their memory. To walk here is to be conscious of the weight of history, the gravity of legacy, the inevitability of consequence. Outside, the frost glints dimly, silver veins running across battlements like frozen tears. The owl hoots again, a lonely echo of what has been, and the banners flap in the cold, skeletal wind. The knight realizes that he is not alone. He is one of many drawn into this orbit of history, ambition, and sorrow. Every heartbeat, every movement, every breath is measured against what came before. To touch the treasure is to inherit the memory of every hand that reached for it, every life shaped by it, every destiny bound to it. He kneels once more, pressing a hand against the coffer, feeling the pulse of the past reverberate through him. He imagines the kings and queens, the fools and warriors, the saints and sinners who have passed this way, all bound to the same relentless truth. Wealth and power are never neutral, never innocent. They carry the weight of ambition, the inevitability of consequence, the permanence of loss. The treasures do not speak in words, yet their story is clear. Desire brings ruin, greed leaves echoes, and memory is the heaviest burden of all. As he rises for the final time, the candle guttering low, shadows merging into one another, he understands the truth that the coffer imparts. It is not a prize to claim, but a sentinel to respect. Patient, eternal, implacable. It waits for the next soul brave or foolish enough to encounter its gravity. The banners flap, skeletal wings brushing the stone, and the owl hoots once more, carrying the lament of all who came before. The knight moves toward the door, the chill of night brushing against his face, aware now of the silent expectation that lingers in the vault. The treasury falls into silence once more, a mausoleum of memory, ambition, and ruin. Gold and silver, swords and crowns, chalices and daggers, all remain, eternal, patient and watchful. They do not sleep, they do not forgive, they do not forget. And in their stillness lies the lesson that the night will carry forward. History is not kind, ambition is never innocent, and legacy weighs heavier than gold. The candle dies, shadows swallow the vault, and the keep itself seems to hold its breath, waiting for the next hand, the next heartbeat, the next story to be written in the endless saga of human desire and consequence.